When Jack Riley left the Navy SEALs after 20 years of service, he didn't look back. There were no regrets, no sentimental speeches, just a quiet drive westward with his dog, Roscoe, and a truck full of tools. The world he knew was loud, chaotic, and dangerous. What he wanted now was silence, space, and the kind of life where a man could wake up with the sunrise and sleep under a sky full of stars. He found it, mostly, on a sprawling 10-acre ranch tucked into the hills just outside of Laramie, Wyoming. The property had once belonged to an old rancher who passed on with no heirs. It was rough around the edges, but Jack liked it that way. He rebuilt the barn with his own hands, replaced the fencing, and converted the main cabin into a solid, no-frills home. Solar panels powered most of the property. Rainwater tanks lined the side of the shed, and a satellite connection gave him just enough internet to read the news, or avoid it entirely. Roscoe, a black lab with gray around the muzzle, took to ranch life like he'd been born for it. Together they spent their days checking the perimeter, tending to the vegetable garden, and keeping the occasional stray coyote at bay. Jack didn't mind the hard work. It kept his hands busy and his mind still. For the first time in years, the nightmares had dulled. The past stayed in the past. The nearest neighbor was about half a mile down the dirt road, and Jack preferred to keep it that way. He wasn't antisocial, just selective. Small talk had never been his thing, and after a life of commanding teams and dodging death, he didn't see the point in pointless chatter. That said, he was always polite. If someone waved, he waved back. If someone needed help lifting a fence post or changing a tire, he'd lend a hand. But that was the limit. It wasn't long before he started hearing whispers. Quiet conversations at the local supply store, murmurs at the farmer's market. "You live up by the ridge, right?" a cashier once asked, scanning his bag of nails. "That's inside the Willow Creek boundary, I think. You gotten any notices from the HOA?" Jack frowned. "HOA?" The kid looked at him, almost apologetically. "Yeah, the Homeowners Association. Real picky bunch. Folks been saying they're cracking down on all kinds of stuff lately. Fencing codes, animal limits, even mailbox colors." Jack raised an eyebrow. He'd never signed up for any HOA. When he bought the property, there hadn't been any mention of one in the paperwork. As far as he knew, the ranch was under county jurisdiction, not some suburban rule book. Still, over the next few weeks, he noticed a few things that didn't sit right. A white SUV parked across the road one evening, its windows tinted too dark to see inside. The mailbox was left open more than once, even though Jack always shut it. And then there was the flyer, just a plain piece of paper stuffed under his door, listing vague compliance violations, and a phone number that went straight to voicemail. He shrugged it off. Probably some mix-up or a prank. But his instincts, the ones honed over decades of combat and covert operations, told him to stay alert. Something about it didn't smell right. Jack Riley may have left the battlefield behind, but he knew trouble when it came creeping. And this quiet little life he'd built, he'd fight to keep it. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the video, so far make sure to hit that like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more awesome content. And while you're at it, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. All right, let's keep going. It started with a yellow slip of paper, folded in half and shoved carelessly into Jack's mailbox. No envelope, no return address, just a single page printed in bold type. Notice of violation. Unauthorized structures, non-regulation fencing, unauthorized livestock. Fines pending. Contact HOA enforcement immediately. Jack stood in his driveway, frowning at the paper. There was no letterhead, no signature, just a generic phone number with a 307 area code. He scanned it again, then flipped it over. Blank. Fines. Pending? He muttered. What fines? He crumpled the paper and tossed it into the burn barrel. Probably a scam. He'd heard of city slickers trying to shake down rural homeowners with fake citations, betting they'd just pay to avoid the hassle, but still, it rubbed him wrong. Whoever left it had to step onto his property to do it. The next morning, while checking the fence line, he noticed something strange. A white flag marker staked into the soil near his east gate. It looked recent, too clean. A few feet away there was another one, this one pink, with E12 scribbled in black marker. Jack crouched, studying it. No utility work had been scheduled, and he hadn't approved any surveying. He yanked the markers up and pocketed them. Later that afternoon, while loading hay into the shed, he heard a truck pull up his driveway, a white Ford Explorer with a cheap magnetic decal on the door that read, Willow Creek HOA Enforcement Division. Two men stepped out, both wearing navy blue polos, khakis, and sunglasses. One had a clipboard, the other carried what looked like a body cam strapped to his chest. Jack walked up slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. "Help you boys with something?" The man with the clipboard spoke first. He was thin, twitchy, and looked like he'd never spent a day outdoors. "Yes, sir. We're here for a routine property inspection." HOA protocol. Shouldn't take long. Jack stared at them. "I didn't request any inspection, and I'm not part of any HOA." The second man chimed in. "Actually, your property falls under Willow Creek Association jurisdiction. All residents must comply with regulations, sir. Section 9A, line 17. Jack's expression didn't change, but his mind was already cataloging details. No name tags, no ID badges, generic uniforms, and the vehicle didn't have government plates. The clipboard? It looked like something printed at a FedEx. "You got paperwork proving that?" he asked calmly. The first man held up the clipboard and flipped through a few pages. "We mailed you a notice last week. We're just here to verify compliance. Fencing, livestock count, auxiliary structures." Without waiting for permission, they started walking toward the barn. Jack stepped in front of them. "You take one more step, and I'll consider it trespassing." The two men paused. The twitchy one cleared his throat. "Sir, if you interfere, we'll have to file a non-compliance report and escalate fines." Jack narrowed his eyes. Then, "You better bring a real badge next time." The men exchanged glances, clearly thrown off. After a beat, they turned and walked back to their SUV. No words, no citations. Just a quiet retreat and a cloud of dust as the Explorer backed down the drive. That night, Jack sat on the porch with Roscoe at his feet, sipping coffee as the sky turned to fire. He wasn't easily rattled, but this wasn't just someone playing games. They were organized, confident, and fake. He pulled out the crumpled citation from the burn barrel and smoothed it out. Then he took the plastic survey flags from his pocket and laid them next to it. It felt like the start of something. He didn't know what yet, but he knew trouble when he saw it sniffing around his door. They wanted something, and Jack Riley was going to find out what. 3 days later, just after dawn, the silence of Jack's ranch was shattered by the sound of multiple engines crunching gravel in unison. Roscoe bolted up from the porch, ears perked, tail rigid. Jack was already halfway to the front gate, boots hitting the dirt with purpose, rifle slung but not raised. 5 vehicles had pulled into his drive. 2 white SUVs, a black pickup, and 2 sedans. All unmarked save for the same laughable magnetic logos, Willow Creek HOA Enforcement Division. 8 men spilled out, all dressed in similar cheap uniforms, polos tucked into tactical-looking pants, some wearing utility belts that seemed more for show than function. One even had mirrored aviators and fingerless gloves, as if he were cosplaying security. The lead man was tall, heavy-set, with a clipboard in one hand and what looked like a walkie-talkie in the other. He didn't wait for Jack to greet him. "Sir, you are in violation of Willow Creek HOA Code 14.2 regarding unapproved structures, livestock overage, and unauthorized fencing. We are here to perform a compliance search." Jack's boots stopped in the dirt, 20 feet from the first SUV. He said nothing at first, just let his eyes do the work. None of these men had real badges. No one had a body cam this time. The SUVs had regular plates, no government issue, no contractor markings. One of the sedans still had a dealership frame. The way they moved, too cocky, too careless. It wasn't professional. It was theatrical. And that's when it hit him. This wasn't enforcement. This was a shakedown. Or worse. "You brought a search team without a warrant?" Jack asked flatly. "We don't need one," the heavy-set man replied. "HOA jurisdiction allows us to inspect—" "No, it doesn't," Jack cut him off. "Not on private, unincorporated land. You're not law enforcement. You're trespassing." That stopped them briefly. One of the younger men toward the ear back shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward the barn. "You gonna stand in our way?" the leader challenged. Jack exhaled slowly, squinting against the morning light. "I don't need to. The law already does." Then he stepped to the side just slightly, just enough to reveal the mounted trail camera blinking red from the tree behind him. Another was clearly positioned over the porch. A drone hovered silently 30 feet above, its shadow flickering across the dusty ground. "I've got you on 3 cameras right now," Jack said calmly. "Entering with no ID, no legal authority, issuing false claims. I suggest you get back in those Toyotas before the sheriff gets here. He's already on the way." The leader scoffed, but the bluff had worked. Jack hadn't called anyone yet, but the men didn't know that. One of them spoke quietly to the others. They began to retreat, uncertain. The whole group started backing toward their vehicles. But then one of them made a mistake. A guy in the pickup broke off from the others and started walking toward Jack's barn, clearly trying to sneak around the side. Maybe he thought he could grab a few photos or mark the place somehow. Jack's demeanor changed in an instant. "Roscoe!" he barked. The dog took off, barking loud and fast, cutting the man off halfway. Jack followed, voice sharp. "You really want to find out how fast I can draw?" he warned. The man froze, hands raised. All right, I'm backing off." The rest of the group scrambled, hastily piling into their cars. The engines roared to life, and within seconds, the whole convoy was backing down the driveway. Jack didn't move. He watched them go until the dust settled, and the last bumper disappeared behind the trees. He stood in the silence, chest rising and falling with steady breath. Roscoe trotted back, tail wagging like they'd just finished a game. Jack scratched. Behind his ears, eyes still scanning the road. They were testing him. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. He turned back to the house, locked the gate behind him, and walked straight to the study. He opened a drawer, pulled out a black notebook, and began writing down every detail. License plate numbers, facial features, vehicles, the fake codes they quoted. His instincts, long dormant, were wide awake now. This wasn't just about fines or fences. Someone wanted something, and they were willing to push the line to get it. Well, they'd just picked the wrong ranch to raid, and the wrong man to mess with. Jack Riley had never been one to pick fights, but he knew exactly how to end them. And after that morning's raid attempt, it was clear this wasn't about neighborhood bylaws or property line disputes. This was coordinated, deliberate, and masked with just enough formality to fool someone less observant. But they'd made a mistake choosing Jack. He wasn't just a rancher with a dog and a garden. He was a retired Navy SEAL with years of counter-intel experience, and he'd dealt with smarter threats in worse terrain. That night, he got to work. Jack dusted off his old gear, a tactical camera drone, a few trail sensors, and an encrypted radio scanner. From the supply shed, he grabbed a few motion lights, tripwire alarms, and some homemade perimeter markers. Nothing dangerous. He wasn't looking to harm anyone. He just wanted to make sure that next time they'd walk into a situation they couldn't control. He started with the tree line near the east pasture, where the survey flags had first appeared. There, he set up 2 silent ground sensors and a solar-powered camera feed aimed at the blind spot near the barn. Then, along the gravel path leading up to his porch, he strung a near-invisible nylon line between 2 posts. Anyone crossing it would trigger a series of motion-activated floodlights. Just enough to confuse, just enough to send a message. It didn't take long. 2 nights later, just after midnight, the first alert came through on Jack's phone. Movement near the back gate. A second ping followed. Someone tripped the nylon line. Jack pulled on his boots, slipped into a dark jacket, and moved like a shadow out the back door. Roscoe stayed behind, trained to stay put until called. Jack moved around the barn, silent and controlled. He'd once infiltrated compounds with armed insurgents, sneaking. Up on a couple of HOA wannabes in the dark? That was child's play. He spotted them near the storage shed, 2 figures crouched low, whispering and pointing at something on a clipboard. One held a walkie-talkie, the other had what looked like a handheld scanner. They weren't expecting resistance. They probably thought Jack was asleep, snoring away in a rocking chair somewhere. He didn't say a word. Just crept up behind them through the tall grass and clicked on his flashlight at full beam. The sudden white-hot light caught both men dead in their tracks. One yelped, the other dropped the scanner. "Evening, boys," Jack said, voice cold and calm. "Lose something?" They spun around, frozen like deer in a spotlight. "Don't move, not unless you want to find out what an electric fence feels like." It was a bluff, he didn't even have one, but the fear in their eyes said it worked. I thought this was the enforcement zone," one stammered. Jack stepped closer, shining the light on their chest rigs. No IDs, no legal documents, just cheap equipment and knockoff gear. He snatched the walkie-talkie and the scanner, then plucked the clipboard from the other man's hands. "Your enforcement division has no legal standing. You're trespassing. I have video evidence, multiple witnesses, and full documentation of your vehicles, faces, and actions. Now, you're going to sit tight while I call the sheriff. Or..." He let that hang in the air. One of them cracked. "Look, we're just doing what we were told, man. We didn't know it was fake. They said you were behind on dues or something." Jack's jaw tightened. "Who told you?" The guy shook his head. "We don't even know their names. Just got a message said, 'Show up, do this, we'd get paid. Venmo, cash.'" It was worse than Jack thought. This wasn't some power-hungry HOA board. It was a scam, organized, systematic, and likely bigger than his little corner of Wyoming. Jack stepped back. "Get out. Tell your friends if they come back. I won't be this polite." The 2 men bolted, sprinting into the night like rats flushed from a tunnel. Jack watched until their outlines disappeared into the trees. By the time he returned to the porch, the adrenaline had already begun to fade. But his mind was racing. Someone was using the HOA as a front, either to intimidate landowners or steal property outright, and they'd just tried to play that game with the wrong man. Jack didn't just plan to stop them, he planned to expose them, for good. Jack didn't sleep much after that night. Not because he was afraid, fear had long since been trained out of him, but because his mind wouldn't stop racing. This wasn't a random scam. It was deliberate, organized, and far too confident for amateurs. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. The next morning, he made 2 phone calls. The first was to Sheriff Dalton, a gruff but fair man who'd known Jack since the day he moved to Willow Creek. Dalton had heard rumors about a rogue HOA enforcement unit, hassling rural landowners. But no one had taken it seriously, until now. "You're not the first one to mention them," the sheriff said over the phone. "But you're the first to come with evidence. Most folks were too rattled or too embarrassed to file a complaint." Then, "Let's rattle them back," Jack said. The second call was to someone he hadn't spoken to in nearly a year, Cal Matthews, a former Navy cryptologist turned private cybersecurity analyst. Jack and Cal had served together in the same ops unit during a rough tour overseas, and while Cal traded boots for keyboards, he still ran his intel firm with military precision. "You always call when it's interesting," Cal said, chuckling. "Tell me what you got." Jack forwarded video clips from his cameras, license plate snapshots, and audio from the interaction with the 2 trespassers. Cal didn't need much more. "Give me 48 hours, he said. "I'll have you names, aliases, credit trails, and maybe a few skeletons." Jack spent the next 2 days tightening his perimeter, reviewing every inch of property for hidden cameras or signs of tampering. He knew better than to assume they wouldn't try again. But he also knew they were running out of time. On the third day, Cal called back. "Jack," he said, his voice low and serious, "you're dealing with a land-grabbing ring. Not just some conmen playing dress-up. These guys are pros, Cal." Had traced the Venmo payments made to the 2 fake enforcers. The money led to a shell company, Rivergate Property Solutions, run out of a P.O. box in Texas. The LLC had been dissolved twice before under different names. The same IP address had been used to send official-looking HOA violation notices to at least 8 other rural property owners across 3 states. Most of them had received demands for immediate compliance, fines, or offers to buy the property and settle quietly. But the real discovery was the man behind it all. "Ever hear of Raymond Kessler?" Cal asked. Jack frowned. The name rang a bell. Ex-real estate developer, went bankrupt in 2017 after a fraud case, disappeared for a while, resurfaced 2 years ago under a dozen aliases. This fake HOA crap? He's been doing it across state lines, small towns, rural areas, places, with weak local enforcement. He poses as a consultant, uses scare tactics to get landowners to sell, and flips the properties through third parties. Sheriff Dalton confirmed it all on his end. One of the SUV plates matched a rental under a name connected to Kessler. Another vehicle had been reported near similar enforcement visits in a neighboring county. "It's a long con," Dalton muttered. "But he got greedy. And now, thanks to you, we've got a chance to shut it down." They started compiling a case. Jack handed over everything, his video footage, audio recordings, and the phony documents he'd collected. Cal provided the digital trail, while Dalton began working with state authorities. But Jack wasn't just interested in prosecution. He wanted the whole story exposed. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the older couple down the road who nearly sold their land out of fear, the widowed farmer who got threatened with bogus citations, the single mom in the next county who paid a compliance fee to avoid a fake lawsuit. Jack looked out across his land, sunlight hitting the fields just right, and clenched his jaw. They thought they could scare people into giving up their homes. They forgot some people don't scare easy, and he wasn't done yet. The plan came together like clockwork, tight, tactical, and silent. Jack wasn't just some off-the-grid rancher with a grudge anymore. Now, he was the centerpiece in a sting operation designed to bring a criminal ring down hard and publicly. After gathering enough evidence with Cal's cyber trail and Sheriff Dalton's investigation, it was time to flush the rats out, and Jack knew exactly how to do that. He started by spreading a little bait. A few carefully staged conversations around town, worded just loud enough to reach the right ears. Jack made it seem like he'd be away for the weekend. Something about a veterans' charity event in Montana. He even packed his truck, parked it outside for a few hours, then drove it into town and left it at a friend's place. As far as anyone watching knew, the ranch was empty. But it wasn't. Hidden among the trees and hay barns were 2 sheriff deputies, 1 game warden who owed Jack a favor, and Cal, who'd flown in for the occasion, just to see his digital detective. Work come full circle. Jack himself stayed in a makeshift blind just off the main house, with a headset and night vision binoculars. They'd installed 6 new cameras, most of them invisible to the naked eye. Every corner of the property was covered. Even Roscoe had a GPS tag and a tiny mic hidden in his collar, just in case things got ugly. All they needed to do now was wait. It was just past 1:30 in the morning when the first movement came. Jack watched through the scope as a pair of headlights crept down the dirt path like a snake in the weeds. Then another, and another. 3 vehicles, no markings, all SUVs. Just like last time. "They're here," Jack whispered into his mic. The lead vehicle parked right outside the main gate. 4 men stepped out, 3 in the same fake HOA uniforms as before, 1 wearing a hoodie and baseball cap. Jack zoomed in. The man in the cap was bulkier than the rest, older too. "That's Kessler," Cal whispered, confirming what Jack already suspected. "We got him." The men moved with practiced ease, cutting the padlock off the gate, spreading out like, ow. They'd done this before. One pulled a clipboard and started barking out fake orders. Another popped the trunk and pulled out a violation notice sign, clearly meant to be planted near the entrance. But as they rounded the back of the house, heading toward the barn, things changed fast. One of them tripped a wire, not a trap, but a sensor, triggering a silent alert and activating the thermal imaging camera above the door. "Team 1, move in." Sheriff Dalton's voice crackled over the comms. 2 deputies emerged from the shadows, weapons drawn but lowered. Flashlights hit the fake enforcers like spotlights on a stage. "Sheriff's Department, hands where we can see them." Panic set in instantly. One of the fake HOA men tried to bolt toward the field, but Roscoe, loyal and trained, intercepted with a low growl and a quick cut-off maneuver. Another slipped and fell flat trying to scale the corral gate. Kessler froze, stunned, as Cal stepped out from behind the horse trailer, holding up a phone. "Smile for the live stream, Raymond. You're being recorded from 6 angles." "Who the hell are you?" Kessler snapped. "Someone who hates bullies," Jack said, finally stepping into the light. The look on Kessler's face shifted from arrogance to fear as recognition sank in. The takedown was clean. No violence, no gunfire, just careful coordination and the weight of law pressing down. By 2 a.m., all suspects were in custody, the vehicles impounded, and the ranch was quiet again. But Jack wasn't celebrating just yet. The fight might have ended on his land, but the story wasn't over. Next, he was going to make sure the whole world knew what these men had done, and how close they came to stealing what people had built with their bare hands. The sting had rattled the hornet's nest, but the queen was still alive. Despite the overnight arrests, Jack knew something wasn't right. Sheriff Dalton confirmed it the next morning. 2 of the suspects they detained were low-level players. The real operators, including Kessler's most trusted lieutenants, had gotten spooked and disappeared into the wind. But Jack had a feeling they wouldn't stay gone for long. Criminals like Kessler didn't just run. They regrouped, and he was right. 2 nights later, while reviewing camera footage from the perimeter, Jack spotted something strange. A vehicle parked off the property line, hidden behind a ridge. Then another, slowly creeping along the east side fencing, far from the road. Jack noted the timestamp. 2:12 a.m. "Dalton," he said over the secure line, "we've got movement. Looks like they're circling back." By dawn, law enforcement was in place. Not just locals this time, state troopers, a couple of federal agents, and even a tactical drone unit from Cal's security firm. This wasn't just about a ranch anymore. It was about a multi-state operation hiding behind fake authority, preying on people too isolated to fight back. Jack stood at the center of it all, calm, focused, unreadable. He had his boots planted in the dust, eyes scanning every corner of his land. The same land someone had tried to steal with fear and fake uniforms. Not today. The fake HOA trucks returned just before noon, broad daylight, bold as ever. Jack figured they thought the failed raid had shaken him. Maybe they thought law enforcement wouldn't want to stir up more trouble. But this time, Jack was ready, and so was everyone else. As the 3 SUVs rolled up the drive, Jack stood alone in front of his gate. No dogs, no badge, just a man, tall and silent, with arms crossed and a look that could have turned iron to ash. The lead car stopped. A man stepped out. Not Kessler, but his right-hand thug, Brad Cullen, stocky, with mirrored shades and an overconfident smirk. "Mr. Walker," he called out mockingly, "this is your last warning. You're in violation of HOA." Jack raised a hand. "Stop right there." The man blinked. "Excuse me?" Behind Jack, out of sight until that moment, 6 law enforcement officers emerged. 4 from the barn, 2 from the tree line, weapons drawn but pointed low. More agents stepped from unmarked vehicles, sealing off the road in both directions. "You're surrounded," Jack said, voice low and steady. "Put your hands where we can see them." Confusion rippled through the fake enforcers. Some reached for radios. Others began backing toward their vehicles. One young man panicked and ran, straight into the arms of a state trooper hiding behind the windmill. Within seconds, chaos broke loose. One SUV slammed into reverse, trying to escape. But it didn't get far. A tire spike had been buried just under the gravel. The vehicle skidded, fishtailed, and died. Another imposter, refusing to comply, got tackled hard and cuffed near the barn. The rest gave up quickly, some lying flat on the ground before they were even ordered to. Jack kept his stance. He didn't move until the last man was restrained. When the dust settled, the ranch was quiet again, but this time, for good reason. Kessler had been found holed up in a cheap motel an hour away, caught trying to burn documents in a bathroom trash can. One of Cal's drones had tracked his rental car's license plate through traffic cams. The FBI picked him up without a fight. Sheriff Dalton clapped a hand on Jack's shoulder as they watched the final SUV get towed away. "You ran this like a damn general," Dalton said. Jack shook his head. "Just protecting what's mine." But deep down, it was more than that. He hadn't just defended a patch of land. He'd protected a way of life. His and everyone else's that had been threatened by men pretending to hold power. They never earned, and now they were exposed. The courtroom was packed. Local news cameras rolled. Reporters jostled for sound bites. And on the far side of the gallery, Jack sat quiet, arms crossed, watching Kessler's smirk fade as the charges were read aloud. Fraud, impersonating law enforcement, attempted extortion, conspiracy. The list went on like a grocery receipt for justice. Thanks to Jack's planning and Cal's digital forensics, the entire fake HOA ring had unraveled. Hidden bank accounts were uncovered. Dozens of rural homeowners came forward, some trembling, some furious. But they all said the same thing. They thought they were alone. Until now. Sheriff Dalton made it a point to swing by Jack's place in person once the last court date wrapped. They shared a firm handshake over black coffee on the porch. "You didn't just stop a scam," Dalton said. "You made people feel safe again." Jack gave a small nod, gaze fixed on the horizon. "Just did what needed doing." The ranch returned to its quiet rhythm after that. The barn doors creaked open to morning sun. Roscoe chased field mice again. Peace had a way of settling back in like an old friend. But Jack made one small change. At the front gate, a new hand-carved sign now stood tall and proud. "This property protected by retired Navy SEAL. Enter at your own risk." It was part warning, part inside joke. But it worked. Word spread fast. Nobody came sniffing around. After that, unless they brought beer, good conversation, or both. Then came one final twist, almost poetic in its irony. While working with the county to update his deed after the court case, Jack was informed the scammers had targeted his land. For a specific reason. Hidden in the paperwork was something Jack had overlooked for years: mineral rights. Turns out the hills on his east side sat on a deposit of rare earth elements, valuable stuff, especially for tech manufacturing. Kessler had known, and he'd nearly gotten away with it. But Jack just laughed when the official handed him the revised records. "Guess that old dirt's worth more than I thought," he said. In the end, Jack didn't just win. He sent a message, loud, clear, and unforgettable. Don't ever mistake a quiet life for a weak one. If you enjoyed this video and want to see the next part, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated. See you in the next one. Your support means the world, means the